Ugh. Spam calls. Sound familiar? Introducing Line 2. Get a second phone number right on your existing phone. Imagine discounts, appointments, online forms. Handle it all without giving out your personal number. It's like having a secret weapon against spam. And when those unwanted calls sneak through, boom, blocked. No more interruptions, no more stress. Stay connected, stay protected. Keep your main number safe and out of harm's way. Ready to take back your phone? Visit line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in the App Store today.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne. It's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today, we are jamming with Ashli, who co-leads Standard Meat Company, a Fort Worth, Texas family business founded in 1935, alongside her brother Ben and father Billy Rosenthal as chairman. Ashli began her career in the food industry at a young age, but later pursued a career in fashion, bringing her to New York City. Then she kind of came full circle and ended returning to the food industry, I believe 2008, right? Is that?
That's right. Yep.
Yes, that's right. And I say the rest is history because we're going to cover a lot of that. But recently, 2024, Ashli and Ben received the Ernst Young's Entrepreneur of the Year National Award for their innovation and sustainable leadership. And there was a quote from the judges from this award that I think is so beautiful. They said, "Fourth generation leaders Ben and Ashli have revitalized the company by blending a commitment to sustainability with a family-first culture, fueling exceptional growth and securing Standard Meat's legacy as an industry trailblazer." I mean, how does that feel, Ashli, just to even hear those words?
It's wild. I mean, that whole Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year experience was wild. I actually wasn't even familiar with the award, but my brother was very familiar. And so I sort of started down that process, not understanding like how big of a deal it was.
Mm,
And it's a very long process of a lot of different interviews, a lot of reviews of everything that has gone into your company. And, when we won the local version in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we were blown away. And we thought we were going to this fun, conference out in
yeah.
California just to be there. We were like, there's no way in hell we would actually be receiving this. And to actually receive it was so wild because, I don't know, there's something that at times, and maybe part of that's being in a family business where you just don't always stop to give yourself any credit. You just kind
Yeah.
of are always questioning, like, should I really be here? So
Yeah.
to get recognized for the work we've done over the last 6 years was a real momentous, like, heart stopper, right? And it just meant a
Mm.
lot to us because I think it made us reflect a little bit on, like, maybe we do know what we're doing here. Maybe we're
Yeah.
doing something innovative. Who knows?
Something's happening for sure. Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, and I've already told you this when we met in person, but I feel like it just for the listeners, it's important to reiterate this because I have the great pleasure of spending a lot of time with different teams around the world and being in many offices and so forth. And there was just I'll never forget sitting on the couch, waiting for my meeting with you in your office and the energy, the vibe, I mean, I knew really nothing about the company other than the kind of what I could see on the website, but the
Right.
the energy and what you've been able to create, you and the team, of course, I mean, we're talking 90 years
Yeah.
at this point.
It's
I mean,
wild.
that is no joke. And to still have that, you could feel the kind of the family and the people first vibe in that office. It was just it's hard to describe, as you can see, I'm struggling kind of trying to find words for it because it's a feeling, right? And
Yep.
it's, like, that in itself, I mean, I think deserves a pretty big award.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
s so, I mean, we're just obviously jumping right in, but I'm gonna back us up a little bit because, I've gotta ask you, the standard question that everyone gets to avoid all these job titles, and then really wanna just unpack a little bit more about your backstory, then we can just dive into some of the kind of the juicy
Perfect.
topics and whatnot. So, first main question, Ashley, is just job titles aside and all that backstory, like who are you as the person sitting here today?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this question, knowing that you often start with it. And I think I would have really had no trouble answering it like 4 or 5 years ago, right? I would have
Mm,
said all the standard things, right? I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, a daughter, and I'm a president of a very awesome, legacy company that brings me so much joy and passion, right? But like
Yeah.
that's such a bullshit canned answer that like doesn't feel as real to me anymore. And I think it's because I don't actually know how to answer that anymore, right? Because I feel
Mhm.
like this journey over the last 3 or 4 years that I've been down, personally and professionally, has just brought up so many questions about who I actually am. And I don't know if that's just been, sort of where I am in my own, like learning how to reflect in a new way or working with new coaches or growing a business. But I think some of it is also just, um, being middle aged all of a sudden. Like, I don't even know if we're really middle aged, but like, right, being
Yeah.
in like my early 40s and like pausing and like, you're like, oh my God, I set all these goals for myself at a very young age. And a lot of them were very reflective of what my parents had done, right? Like, I wanted to go to school and graduate from a good school and get a good job and marry a good person, have 2 kids and do, you make yourself a
Yeah.
list, right? Um, and I checked all those boxes, right? And all of a sudden, I checked all the boxes where my parents had been. And I was like, well, what the hell's next? What do I do now? And it just led me down so many paths of trying to figure out who I am. And I honestly just, I think maybe to some degree, I'll never be able to answer it fully, which is probably great.
Yeah.
But like today, who I am is, I'm, I'm trying to be a better listener. I'm trying to learn more every day. I'm trying to grow and never be stagnant, and all the while run a company that was handed to me, with white gloves and, but be a really present mom to my, almost 14-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old son. And it's hard as shit. I have no idea
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for
So I
being
don't know if that's a
honest
great
because
answer, but
no,
something.
it's a real answer and that there's no label on the answer at all. It's real. I feel it, and I think a lot, and myself included, can really resonate with what you're saying. It's,
Yeah.
because I get questions on certain things that I'm doing as well, and it's like from the outside, it's like, oh, like even the podcast, it's
Yeah.
been 8 years or whatever, but still trying to figure it out in a
Right.
way, right?
Right. Totally.
And trying to grow and try new things and so forth, and that's hard. It's like you talked about this in a keynote that I saw you deliver, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's literally." Because I'm writing or I'm working on my second book,
Yeah.
and your visual is the exact topic. So you had this visual of these like swinging from a trapeze
Oh,
essentially,
yeah.
right? And what you're kind of describing is this there's this between space,
That's right.
and I'm realizing it's like between worlds, it's between selves, but there's a between moment for almost everything,
That's right.
as I'm working on this topic, and that space is really challenging often,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's the thing that I'm really curious, and I think this is probably what you're describing around, you would have had a different answer 4 or 5 years ago in the "Who am I?" question.
Right.
Like, how have you been navigating that space? Like, what's been helpful, at least for where you're at right now to make the in-between space a little bit more peaceful
Mhm.
or being more
Mhm.
content without it feeling like a war zone?
Yeah. It's interesting. When I really started all of this, it really, at first I was very much holding on to one trapeze. And it took like a lot of trust and a lot of faith in some guidance from certain coaches and mentors to be willing to like let go of the first side and swing myself towards the second side. Right. And,
Yeah.
here we are a few years later, and I'm not sure I've really gotten to the other side. I had one coach say to me, like, the bad news is you're falling and you have no parachute, but the good news is there's no ground. And I'm like, well, how the hell is
Oh,
that supposed to
wow.
make me feel better? Right. Like, I'm just falling through the air. Like, where does the calmness come in? But
Yeah, yeah,
but believe it or not, like, it was a very long, like, bit of pure terror and fear where I found myself trying to figure out who I was and just crying all the time and just very emotional and very hard. And my coach kept saying, like, "Just stick with it. You've gotta trust that you're gonna come out the other side." And I just kept being like, "Well, can't you just do it for me, like wave a wand
Yeah.
and just tell me how to get to the other side. He's like, actually, I cannot. He's like, I'll hold your
Yeah.
hand, right? I'll make like the
Yeah.
fall a little less scary, but you just got to trust me. And then really after about 2 years, you start seeing these little moments where it's like, okay, maybe I'm
Mm,
seeing it. And for me, that was really like they were feelings, right? It was like this, all of a sudden, there was less anxiety in a moment where I know there would have been a lot of anxiety, right? Or there was like
yeah.
more of a willingness to like play with what perfection means to me and say, like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can do this if even if I don't do it perfectly, maybe it'll still be great. And so it's like a lot of personal risk. And um, I was very unwilling to do it, I think, for a long time. And then all of a sudden, you get this taste of what it can be like. And so you
Yeah.
lean in harder and faster. And then all of a sudden, you feel like you're a little closer to the other side. And just having a
Well,
little bit more trust and faith in the things you can't control, which is probably,
yeah.
like, the hardest thing for a person like me to do.
Yeah. Well, and something that we've literally struggled with since the beginning of time. I mean,
Totally.
as you know, I've studied Stoics and whatnot, and I mean that's a huge proponent of their messaging, which we're talking thousands of years, right? But so it's, I only share that because it's hard. I mean, obviously, it's been thousands of years. It's not like there are answers and guidance throughout all these different wisdom lineages and so forth. It's just I think what we need now is we need a lot of reminders
Mhm,
because we're surrounded by the opposite of
mhm.
basically how we wanna feel day in and day out with all the craziness in the world
Right.
nonstop. And and then also just, you've mentioned coaches,
Mhm,
several times now, just being surrounded with people to help, like, and we see
mhm,
this in ancient wisdom and tribes and so forth, right? There were
mhm.
there were wisdom transfers, which we've lost a lot of that,
Totally.
and especially in North American culture. So, when did you first start? I know you're one of your at least your current coaches, should give him a little shout out, Mr.
Yeah.
Jerry Colonna, who's I think he's a four-time guest of this show now, definitely 3, but
I think it's 4 from looking at
I think
your
it's 4, you're
list. I
right,
think
you're
it's
4,
4.
because there was I interviewed him for another show that I was hosting, so it's been 4 times. All 4 times, he somehow brought me into some state of tears, usually gratitude of some case or it completely unexpected, so I'm sure you've experienced this as
It's been
well.
interesting.
It's and so anyway, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but when did you first start bringing help, I guess you can say, into your world, so it's not just you alone, and
Right.
and, I know you have your team and so forth, but I mean, like,
Sure.
personally.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was in my probably early 20s when I was living in New York and working in the fashion world, and I was having a ton of anxiety and intensity. And that's when I actually started just doing regular old therapy, like the kind you
Yeah,
imagine sitting in front of somebody on a couch, right? In New York City. It was like very classic therapy.
yeah.
And I thought I was doing something great. And I did that type of therapy for about 20 years with just 2 therapists, and I thought
Mm,
they were amazing, and they probably were for what I was doing.
sure.
Um, and then, slowly started to wind that down and got really engaged in our family business. And, a couple years into the family business, I had a really dear friend, another female like founder of an incredible business here in Texas, say to me, like, I really think you would enjoy this leadership program in Dallas, this Stagen
Mm,
Leadership Academy, which I had never heard of. And because I admired her so much, I just was like, sure, let's go. And I literally like called them up and just signed up. And I had this really incredible year-long experience with Rand Stagen, who founded the academy. And it was all about leadership was the idea. But what I found throughout the process was that it was really about becoming a more aware and a better person. So you then you can be a better leader, right? And it was interesting because I had a coach through the program, and it was just like as much as we talked about business, there were all these moments where we were just talking about life and like what was going on in my head. And I always sort of felt like, what am I doing? Like I'm wasting my time. I should be figuring out how to set up this policy or something, right?
Yeah.
And then the year ended and I was like, I spoke to Rand and I was like, I don't know what to do because I don't feel done and I don't really know where to go next. And this is where I started really asking those questions, like, what is next for me? I'm, 41, I'm running my family business. Like this is where dad stopped his career, sort of like what I don't have the right guide. And he's
Mm,
like, okay, you got to try this next program that we do, like a good salesman, right? Like he's literally the best salesman I've
exactly.
ever met. He's like, it's this program called the Advanced Leadership Program, but we also call it the Dragon's Gap. And I'm like,
Ooh.
why the hell do you call it the Dragon's Gap? And he's like, well, I'll just let you. If you want to do it, then you'll learn the answer. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm totally like, there's nothing I can do, but I knew I was going to do it right then and there. And I even interviewed with the guy that leads it and I got off the phone with him and I was like, I still have no idea what this program is, but like, I need to do it. And it was through this very interesting program that like so much of this opened up for me. They call it the Dragon's Gap because I guess back in the old days of cartography, people would be making maps. And when they had not explored an area, they would just paint dragons there because it was like these
Oh,
dangerous,
wow.
unexplored waters. So, like, good luck. Don't go where the dragons are. Right. But
Yeah.
what this program was asking very much was go where your dragons are, like, lean into
Yeah.
them and figure out what you need to work on. Right. And at first, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, when they would say certain things to me, like, you know, what do you think is triggering you? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't even know what you mean. And also they'd be like, you don't need to solve anything. You just need to ponder it and get curious. And I'm like, what do you mean? How do you not solve things? Like, I got to get to
Yeah.
the next finish line. So it's just this very engaging, very interesting program where I had a fantastic coach and two leaders that were just like super interesting and esoteric and but also like really understand the business world. And it just all opened up for me. And I think where it really there were two really distinct moments. One of which was I was in an early session of the program, which we met 4 times a year in person. And the head of the program, the guy that started, his name is Rick Voren. And I'm like being more me than usual, and I'm not worrying so much about what I'm saying. And we're all sort of popcorning comments around the class over certain things. And he literally, we went to a break and he pulled me aside and I really didn't even know him. And he said, that movie As Good as It Gets with, Helen Hunt and Jack Nicholson. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that scene where they go to dinner and she asks him to give her a compliment and he like really struggles to do it and she's almost like about to leave. And he then kind of grabs her arm and says, you make me want to be a better man. And she was like, that's
Mm,
like truly, literally the best compliment I ever got in my life. He looked at me and he said, you make me want to be a better man. And I was like, what the hell? What do you mean? He's like, you make me want to be better at my job, make me want to be doing what I'm doing here. And I mean, it was just like sobbing. I was like, whoa. Because I had so much self doubt and so much I was so unsure of myself and just sure that like I needed to mastermind everyone to think that I was this version of me that I wasn't. And he was literally like saying, like, this real you is what I wish you could really put out there in the world because this is so incredible. And I mean, it just broke me open
yeah.
in a new way to start asking with a new level of curiosity, like, maybe I don't suck. Like maybe I'm not a dumbass, or maybe I'm not an
Yeah.
imposter here running this company. And then working with my coach, his name is Wes Rosacker. He like one day says to me, um, something about being an ugly duckling. And I'm like, what the fuck? An ugly, that's not like a nice thing, right? And I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
even went and bought the book again, like the childhood book, The Ugly Duckling, and read it a few times, read it with my kids. And I was like, okay, one day I finally was like, okay, dude, you got to explain this to me because I'm like kind of offended. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, no, no, no. He's like, Ashley, you're not the ugly duckling, but you are the ugly duckling. But the reality is you're a swan and you've always been one, right? Because the duckling
Yeah.
like assumes he's different from all the ducks. He's uglier than them. He's this, that, and the other. Well, it's because he wasn't them. He wasn't a duck, right? He was a swan. And so
Yeah.
it took like really seeing other swans and realizing his own swanness that he could like really be comfortable being who he was. And it was so just beautiful to me and so interesting and emotional and took so much time, like just being curious about what that meant and why he said it to me. And, for a long time, it was like I wouldn't believe any of these people. Like, I was like, well, this is their job to tell me that I'm a swan. So I'm sure it's
Yeah.
bullshit. And then, those were the things that like led me into the weird space of falling through the air and just being thankful there's
Being
not a
okay with that.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of a little cheesy, but like it's just been this like symbol for me to keep going and keep
Mm.
trying and just like, anything, at a certain point it's time to go to your next teacher, which Jerry has just become my next teacher right now. And it's just I don't even know what's next. That's why I don't even really know how to tell you who I am today,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, we'll play this back for Jerry so you can use it
Oh
in your next
gosh. Yes,
call.
this will be good for him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, there's so much in there. Have you how have you been able to better, I guess, accept uh, it's such a big I guess it's a big I'm trying to formulate in this best way, but like better accept who you truly are and like receive, even like when we're talking about the award, right? And
Mhm,
you're explaining the situation with that, you're there and you're like, "Well, I could feel some of that imposter syndrome,
mhm,
right?"
mhm.
And and again, like just being around you and being in the office, there's something different. I
Yeah,
mean, look at how like even how we met. I mean, it's
yeah.
just such a
So
strain.
wild.
Literally, for everyone listening, we kind of met with like a cold LinkedIn outreach
Which I
situation, and
never read, ever.
yeah.
I don't know
So
why I read
somehow,
your message.
somehow I passed the filters, and within a month, I mean, we had a call before, but we were meeting in person, and here we are on the show, and we're looking at just a different work together. Like it's just, but it's flowed, and I think it's flowed
Mhm,
because of like your energy and who you are and so forth. But I'm also realistic of you're doing this work
mhm,
and you start to get some tools, some practices, some perspective shifts, but it's at least for me, it's easy to slip into old programming and like you're in and out of that space. So
mhm,
what's been helpful for you, I guess, present day to stay on that path of trust
mhm.
and be okay there because it's not easy to do that.
No, and I think that the truth is there's constant regression, or maybe that's a terrible word because that sounds negative, but there's constant dipping back into the patterns that I used to protect myself my whole life, right? That I was
Yeah.
so afraid if anyone saw how broken I was or saw that I was too much and too loud and too all these things, they'd all leave me, right? It's like a classic
Mm.
thing. And so often I can still feel myself putting that protection back on. I mean, even just before getting on this call with you, right? Like the nerves that were coming up, and you can sit there and say to yourself, like, you can do this, right?
Yeah.
You're working on these things, you're working on believing in yourself, and you still just go to that place of self-doubt because it's just so programmed. And I think that one of the big things that's helped to me is to not get so upset by those moments that I used to think of as setbacks. Cause I used to get so
Mm.
frustrated and be like, dude, why am I going backwards if I've just made all these
Yeah.
steps forward? And it's just like they call it a practice for a reason, right? Like it really takes constant practice. And I mean, I think someone said once to me something like, you got to learn to live by practicing living. Right. And it's like, that's exactly what I'm just trying to do all day, every day is just keep practicing at being a little bit better at loving myself and believing in myself and being okay with the reality that not everyone's going to like me and not everyone's going to want to work at Standard Meat and believe in all the things Ben and I are trying to do here. And that's okay. Right. Because it used to just feel like such a horrible. I couldn't imagine making anyone not
Yeah.
like me. That would be the most horrible feeling ever. But like, it's just, you're not for everyone, and that's okay. I'd much rather be a more real version of myself that just I feel so much more energy when I'm being myself versus when I was constantly trying to be this other version of myself that was still me, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
all fake, but it was like I was constantly trying to be
Yeah. It takes a
something.
lot of energy.
Lot of energy and a lot of anxiety and a lot of shit. And then also I think, Mark, honestly, and this is a little cheesy and like probably what everyone would say, but like my kids started getting older, and I found myself like trying to talk to my, now teenage daughter and say to her, like, oh, don't say that about yourself. You're so
Yeah.
amazing. You've got to believe in yourself. Then I'm like, God, I'm such a freaking hypocrite because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't believe in my own, like, I have to figure this out for her. And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is, like, the more work I do, like, I feel like the more I can show up in a way that I hope isn't just totally fucking my kids up. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure I
Yeah. Yeah.
will, but, it's
Yeah.
just that's been a great motivator, right? Just your
Yeah.
family. And then the little
Yeah.
wins, like the little moments when you don't feel as much anxiety or you don't feel as much of like this, you don't feel like a fake. It's like such a hit of dopamine. You're just like, "Holy shit, this feels great to not
Yeah.
think
Well,
I
you're
suck."
totally right, which sounds so crazy, but it's so
So
true. This is
true.
what I love about you and your energy and the way you communicate because I mean, you're speaking about it from a place of like this is obviously your path, your journey, but so many of us are on that exact same
Right.
internal narrative and loop and, in this like resistance loop or whatever it is and
Mhm.
coming up against this. And I think, at least for me personally, can
Mhm.
resonate with that takes so much energy,
Mhm.
especially
Exhausting.
in a business environment as well. Like
Totally.
how can you possibly think of your best strategy or make decisions from a clear place when
Mm-mm.
there's so much energy going towards, and not necessarily, I'm not talking in like a malicious way, but just
Right.
like a survival way, essentially old
Mhm.
programming
Mhm.
takes so much energy. So
And
have you noticed just go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and to your point, that like exhaustion blocks your creativity, right? And
Yeah.
your innovation skills. And like those are the most fun parts of my job is like how do I think outside the box and be creative and different, bring different things to the table that, no one else around the table is gonna bring. You can't show up with that if you're just trying really hard to think about how to say the smartest thing in the room or
Yeah.
or not to step on anyone's toes or, all those kind of things that we battle with. And letting my guard down has really allowed me to be able to connect more deeply with the people I work with everybody in my life. And it's those connections that I really think they lead to those breakthroughs that are like really rich um, and I think that's some of the energy maybe you felt here at our headquarters was that it is a feeling. It is not something that's easy to articulate, but it's like there's something in the deep connections we make within our community that is standard meat that like really allows us to be to show up as ourselves, bring our whole
Yeah.
selves to the table, and then come up with the most creative solutions to very weird challenges that, our partners are up against. So it's a really awesome, energetic, passionate vibe that I just I live off of.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So how do you keep this going within, I mean, within yourself, but then also, I guess, projecting out and thinking of the team and when you're going through periods of change and innovation, and you shared some examples of your journey where, basically, I think if I'm remembering this correct, I don't have notes on this, but there's like the ice pack
Oh yeah.
situation. Like there's some crazy stuff that you had to innovate and really think outside the box to solve for. So if I mean, feel free to share any of those examples, but even like looking into the future, are there ways that you're trying to bring some of this kind of thinking and this, I guess, self-work into the
Mhm.
fold as well to because you're doing it obviously, but the leadership team, the rest of the team, like
Mhm.
how do you look at that as the company continues to grow?
Well, I'll start with the examples of some of the cool things that we've done in the last couple of years, because I think that adds a little context to like
Yeah.
why we're doing some of the personal work we're doing at our company with our leaders. And so one of those examples happened during COVID. And let me foreshadow it with this. My dad, his career has been very colored with very creative food processing solutions that
Mm,
were like created solely for a particular challenge of a partner. Like he one of the ones he's like most, sort of lauded for was we're in the meat portioning business, right? We age and cut steaks. We don't raise animals or do anything like that. We're like really a middleman that creates products that then we deliver it to the our restaurant partners in the most in the way for them to be able to deliver the highest quality out of their kitchens. And that means
mhm,
something different for everyone, right? For some people, that means aging, cutting a steak. For some people, it means, fully cooking a protein through sous vide that they then just finish back a house, right? We have a whole plethora of customers. They're all mostly large national restaurant chains or meal kit companies. And so one of the things that was very cool that he did many years ago was he saw a fish operation in Mississippi that was using this really cool portioning technology out of Iceland that was new to the US
wow.
for fish portioning, but it was also just no one had ever thought of using on anything but fish because it came out of Iceland. And he like flies up to Iceland, like just on a whim, which is very him. He's very entrepreneurial and meets these guys from this company called Morel and he just literally buys equipment on the spot, brings it down to Texas and starts using it for steak cutting, and it literally changed the whole industry. Like everybody starts using this equipment, like it's just brilliant, and it just changed. It
Wow.
wasn't the way we use technology or robotics to replace jobs. It was just changing the way our team did their jobs in a more ergonomics way, in a way where they could use their skills versus just sort of the dumb, you know,
Mhm,
repetitive motions. And so, anyways, that's like very much in our DNA at Standard Meat is like, how
yeah.
do you do things that are outside the box and differently? Just because something was done a certain way at one point, absolutely. If anything, actually, that means we should do it differently. Don't
Yeah,
reinvent the wheel to reinvent the wheel, but like make the wheel better, over
yeah.
and over again, which is why I think we've existed for 90 years is this mindset of like being an entrepreneur within a company that's already aged, right? We're not
Yeah,
brand new. We're not necessarily all founders, but kind of we each get to be
yeah.
founders of all of these cool things within our company and really use it as a platform to do all kinds of cool shit. So, anyways, so the project was we were in the middle of COVID, and one of our large partners is HelloFresh, the meal kit company, and they use a lot of ice packs to ship their boxes to their customers. And it was a really hard time to get ice packs because it was COVID and all the pharmaceutical companies were spending a ton of money for all the ice. And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
really expensive, made it expensive and hard for someone like HelloFresh to get it. And they're like, so do you know anyone that does this, right? Because we don't make ice. We're a meat company. And we're like, okay, let us go back and like look at our network and we started like researching ice. We have this one guy that's like a little bit of a mad scientist. He actually started his career as a chef at the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park and then fell into manufacturing with us and is now like some very strange combination of a chef and a food scientist and an engineer. It's like it's
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
So he's like,
Mhm.
Ashley and Ben, this is like really similar to the soup business, which we used to make soups. And, you're just putting some polymer and some water in a bag and then you're just freezing it. And it turns out that like the ice industry is like incredibly archaic. And what they do today is they do that. They put product in a case and they put it in a freezer for 3 weeks before it's frozen. So you just sit on water for taking up very valuable, like whole, warehouse space.
Yeah.
He's like, "But I think that we can use this piece of equipment that we use to cook in." This I don't know if you're familiar with sous vide cooking, but like
No.
submerging a bag. Sous vide means under pressure in French.
Okay.
And the idea of sous vide is you take a protein and you put it in plastic packaging and shrink it down, you vacuum seal it and put it into water and you cook it at a in a water bath at a specific temperature that allows it to reach a certain temperature very safely and you
Mm,
don't have to ever overcook anything but you can still make
okay.
it like beautifully like you can make it this beautifully medium rare steak cooking sous vide and it's super safe to eat something that's pink in the middle because you met all these food safety requirements. So
Yeah.
anyways, he said, what if we fill those tanks with a brine solution that's really cold instead of really hot? And we put these bags in it, and I think they'd come out the other side frozen in like 45 minutes. And
That's awesome.
it's crazy. And we had this amazing equipment supplier out of Canada that, was
Woo, go
behind
Canada.
9-0, right? Call out for you. It was part of the brainstorm for our chef Regan. And we took it to HelloFresh and we're like, we think we can do this for you. And we think we could do it for you reasonably. And we'll build a plant right by your distribution center. So we just can never warehouse water, and we'll just take it back and forth, back and forth. We'll save on it's very sustainable. We're using less resources. There's less effects on the environment, da 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 da. And they're like, great, let's do it. And now we're in the ice business. It's wild. And we just put our second line in, and they're still our only customer. I mean, it's exclusive for them right now. And it's crazy and it's awesome. And we're making ice in 45 minutes. And these people are still
Yeah.
making it in 3 weeks. And so I tell that story to say that, like, a lot of that creativity can't happen if you're trying to protect yourself from failure, or
Yeah.
you're afraid of risk. But at the same time, it's an expensive undertaking. And so you also can't be impulsive, and you can't just do everything your gut says. So there's somewhere in
Yeah.
the middle where the best creative ideas come about. And what I've learned in the last few years running the business with my brothers, well, first of all, he and I are night and day, where we like to think of it as yin and yang. He is
Okay.
like super, super analytical and thoughtful and reasonable. And I'm like kind of a freak, crazy. I go with my gut, And
Sure.
so, I needed to learn to be less impulsive. And he is, more and more willing to take certain risks without knowing every single detail, the more and more we work together. And then we come to this magical place where we're willing to take risk. We're willing to listen to new creative ideas that often come from the strangest places, like a mad scientist chef, and not necessarily, the guy that does all of our capital projects, right? And
Hmm.
be willing to take a risk and do something and try to not have that fear of failure. And I think
Yeah.
the more and more we leaned into the risk and not being afraid of failure, the more creative and successful we became, and could then stop and ask ourselves, because Ben, I think, struggles with the same thing I do at times, where it's like, maybe we didn't just get this job just because dad is our dad. Maybe we're bringing something to the table here, right? Like, we've assembled this incredible team. We've helped elevate this, that, and the other. We've introduced all these new crazy projects. Like, the more times you do it, I guess it's like, I think Jerry would say to me, like, some of that is like, with age comes an experience, not just age, but experience comes wisdom, right? And you
Mhm.
start
Yeah.
like, oh, like, remember that time we did that thing and that was really smart and good? Like, okay, maybe we're not idiots. It's just like
Yeah.
those little moments mixed with the self reflection and coaching that have given us more and more confidence in ourselves as humans, which has then inspired us to really um, figure out how we can bring some of that work to our team, so they, if they want, can have that same kind of personal growth, because we all show up with our sh- heavy shit from our childhood, or from
Of
some
course.
kind of
We're
experience, or from
human.
something. We're human. So it's like become this really cool thing that, like, inside a meat company, right? We're trying to create this development program where people can develop themselves as human beings, which then just leads to this real ownership and passion
Yeah.
for the work they get to do every day. And it just gives it a whole different level of meaning. So it's like, it's so fulfilling to, like,
Well,
take
it's
it to more
yeah.
people.
I
That was
can
long.
I
Sorry.
No, it was so good. It was so good, and I should I try not to write down questions as you're speaking, because I just wanna be present, obviously, but I have so many questions that are floating around in my mind. But I guess a point before that, I think you mentioned it's fulfilling, but I also think it's really smart in this. Of course, I'm biased with this work because you know the work that I do.
Yeah.
But if I think of what you shared about what your dad did,
Hmm.
and literally coming from Iceland to Texas,
Hmm.
in terms of this new technology and so forth, and the way you described it was, it's not necessarily that you're like eliminating jobs and things like that, but you're allowing people to operate in their genius,
Person.
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're at that stage again
Mhm.
globally when it
Mhm.
comes to AI and
Mhm.
all of the change and uncertainty and the wildness in the markets that
Mm.
I again, I'm biased, but because I see the data, right? I see
Mhm.
people's minds are literally melting down and
Mm.
self-destructing because of
Mhm.
all of this stress and so
Mhm.
forth, that if we can take the ultimate competitive advantage, which is our minds, and like double down in that space,
Mhm.
this
Exactly.
is where I mean, because you're doing it. Like,
Yeah.
if you were if just spinning and not in a place where you could see opportunity like that, I'd be like, ice is not our business. Like,
Yeah.
stay in this lane here.
Right. Right.
But I don't know, like, I'm sure you've picked this up with looking at other businesses and leaders. When you really start unpacking really successful businesses, there's usually other things happening kind of in the ecosystem. You're like, well, wait a second, there's this whole other thing over here
Mhm.
that is funding maybe this part of the business or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Most people don't know about those situations,
Mhm. It's so
right?
true.
And I mean, you guys are a living, breathing example of that. It's
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Mark, because and our dad said this as well, but like he taught us this, I should say, that there's a lot of intellectual property that happens within a manufacturing business, right? And a lot of it really isn't about building new equipment. It's about putting it together in unique ways. And so often someone will be newer to the company and will have, a customer or even a competitor come in and they'll be like, "Why are you letting them walk through your plant? Like, why are you letting them see your technology?" And I'm like, "Because that's not our competitive advantage. Our competitive
mm,
advantage are our people that actually make that shit work and think about
yeah,
how to put it together. And you do not have go buy all the same equipment and go put it all in the same place. I don't believe that you have the people that we have who I think Ben and I are one of our biggest goals is, we really want everyone that works for us, all 1,100 humans, to feel like they're part of something bigger and they're not just working on a manufacturing line, right? And when you create that community in a world where there is so much uncertainty and where our brains are melting because we're like AI is going to take over and we're all just going to be, I don't know, totally moot.
yeah,
You create this community where people can come together every day in a essential business where you do have to show up and work and you can't work just remotely. You give people something. Again, it goes back to that feeling. You're giving people that feeling of connection that I think is what makes us different and makes us special and makes everybody like enjoy going to work in a manufacturing business, right? There's just something so
yeah.
special about our people. And, it's been a real like fear, I guess, maybe I probably more so on Ben and me than the generations before us is, how do you not mess that culture up, that essence up as you grow, right? Because in just 6 years, we've gone from having two facilities to having five. How do you keep that touch and that warmth and how do you do that? Well,
Mhm.
the way you do it, in our opinion, we hope we're right, is to do just what you're talking about in the work that you do, which is create the opportunity for everyone at every single level to grow and in their own person and for everybody to get that same opportunity. It's like you just can feel like you're a part of something in a different way, right? But it very
Yeah,
much starts at the top, and I think that for Ben and I, it's like we know we have to do the work first, right? And we know
yeah.
that we have to show up and also be like very honest with the work and hope our team is willing to be vulnerable with us because I think that's going to really help us keep that culture alive.
Well, I mean, this is, I think, one of the big reasons is, and especially your comment around, being okay with people seeing your processes and so forth, and making that point about the people. Like, that's why someone like myself, who's an outsider, comes in and feels immediately a
Mm,
different energy in the room.
mm,
I mean, that's not the only reason, but I think it's probably a huge reason,
mhm,
and something coming back to what you said around when you're doing taking big risks or making big moves, trusting and going back, kind of like those experience stacks. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
we've done this before in different ways. You're already doing this with the culture. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of keeping it front and center. And even when I was again, like a lot happened in the 1 hour I was in your office. I mean, you and I have a conversation, but just to go, to show and I guess practice what's being preached, Ben sitting in the other room with his YPL group, which
Yeah.
a lot of our conversation is circling around this idea of you're in community, you have people around you. We're talking about coaching, YPO. I mean, it's a group of, for those that don't know, it's a group of leaders that, stay in touch and share their challenges and guide each other and so forth, among many other things. But
Right.
like you could see that that's happening.
Yeah.
There's the door's not shut. There's glass or on the, in that boardroom. You can see what's going on, kind of thing, and that that goes so far. I
Yeah.
remember I was interviewing. This is years back. I interviewed a CEO of Swiss Vitamins out in
Okay.
Australia, and this gentleman, he sold it and was my first billionaire interview.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
super down
Wow.
to earth human being. But he
Yeah.
shared this story about um, when he first came into the organization, he had, I think, an office kind of in the middle, and it was all basically glass around, so you could see right into it. And first thing he did was he brought in a small little couch to put into the office, and every morning he'd close the door, but you could see into the office, obviously, and he would meditate
Oh, I love that.
for I don't know how long, but frequently. So then all of a sudden, like everyone's seeing this.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like, "Well, what's going on here?" And, it would lead to other conversations, and again, it's just like the leading by example.
Right.
It's so powerful. It's so
Yeah.
powerful.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you one other thing, Mark. I just thought of this. Something else that I think really has helped us this past couple of years is we worked with this incredible group in San Francisco called Jump Associates, and the
Okay.
founder there, Dave Patnaik, I met him through Conscious Capitalism, which you and I know briefly talked about, and his group came in after several attempts on my own to articulate this feeling
Yeah.
and helped us put some language behind what our culture is. And I mean, I'd done it myself a billion times. I'd tried a bunch of different groups, and it was the first time that I think we really got it right. And it was such a long process. And I mean, so many interviews with so many team members. And even like at the time, my 99.5-year-old grandmother who worked at Standard Meat forever ago was being interviewed, my dad, all these people. And we were able to distill it down to this one purpose statement that I think does such a good job of encapsulating like what we're trying to do here. So I'll tell it to you if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please.
It's that Standard Meat exists to inspire the connections and breakthroughs that ultimately feed our life.
Oof.
So good,
Ooh,
right?
it is so good.
And it's
Yeah.
like, I just think that like if that is what we're here to do, right, then it helps guide us to walk the talk and lead by example. I don't have any meditators around here yet. My dad has a couch in his office, but he just lays down and take a nap here and there.
Fair.
And he has no
It's a
problem
different
letting everyone
generation.
see him, but yeah, it's like it's very much like I am I Standard Meat is this container that's meant to inspire us to come
Yeah.
together in a unique way, and that is what creates the magic. And coming together not just around challenges for customers and work, but coming together to become better humans and do the mental fitness, do the hard work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when we're totally scared to, because a lot of these people think Ben and I are completely out of our mind, but they're like willing to try with us,
Yes.
which
It's
we
so
appreciate.
powerful. Last question for you, 'cause time is
Okay. Oh
flying. We could
goodness.
obviously
Oh
continue
goodness.
forever, but if you project forward 90 years from now, let's say, and you're long gone and a lot of the team today, let's just say, but then you're able to kind of just take a bird's eye view of Standard Meat. What would make you smile?
Mm. I think what would really make me smile would be this feeling you and I keep alluding to, this culture. If this culture is alive and real and tangible to a completely different generation of humans,
Yeah.
um, and that we were spreading sort of the purpose throughout the world, throughout our customers and our all stakeholders, I would be so proud, right? I mean, we may
Mm.
not be even making meat, who knows how Americans
Yeah.
or the world will eat in 90 years. But if we can have that culture alive in some form or fashion that's making a difference in people's lives, and when it makes a difference in one person's life, that's like a ripple effect or an exponential, expansion of energy just going out in the world that makes everybody feel a little bit better or more purposeful, like I would be so thrilled. And so I think, we like to think that we're planting some of those seeds today, right?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know, we kind of have a fun theme every year for and this year's theme is the power of potential, and it's sort of
Yeah.
the symbolism is an acorn, and like planting that acorn, and like just because every acorn has the potential to become an oak tree, one out of 10,000 I think actually do, right? So like what do you
Hmm.
need to do in order to unleash that potential? And there's so much that has to do with the environment and the community and the coaching and the feeling. And so it's like if we can be laying those foundations, then my hope is that it just starts growing, and then somebody else will get to see the fruits of our labor.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, so beautiful, so beautiful. And just a gentle reminder or nudge that you've been able to do that for 90 years at this point, which a lot of companies never, never
Yeah.
get to a point like that. So when
Mhm.
it gets hard, don't ever forget what you've already been able to accomplish because you've
Thank
got the
you.
track record. And oh, you are just a breath of fresh air for this planet. And I know
Oh,
you need to do more podcasts. I'm just
oh,
telling you,
you're
you
awesome.
need your wisdom needs to be spread, your
Oh,
energy, your vitality, like all of that is just such a gift to all of us. So
thank you, Mark.
thank you. And if I wasn't running my own companies, I'm like, where do I submit my resumes?
Oh, I love it.
I'd be submitting for put me head of ice or something like that.
Awesome. Well, you and I will work together in some capacity. I have no doubt.
Yeah, I
This
feel
is
that
too much
too.
fun. Thank you
I
so
know,
much
I feel
for
that.
for bringing me in and convincing me to do this and take a risk, right? It was very,
Yeah.
very fun.
You know that feeling when you're about to score 30% off, but they want your number? Ugh. Give them your Line 2 number instead. It's a second line on your phone, perfect for nabbing promo codes without inviting spam to your party. Sign up for every discount under the sun, then block the junk texts that follow. You get all the perks, but none of the spammy baggage. More codes, less chaos. Visit line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in the App Store and get your shopping sidekick today. Because the only thing blowing up your phone should be good deals.